Hello, and thank you for attending Cracking the Code of Managing the Chaos of Everyday Project Management. My name is Cole Orndorff. I'm the Architecture, Engineering, and Construction Practice Director for Fishbowl Solutions. Our agenda today, just give you a brief overview of Fishbowl Solutions, outline why we're here and what problem we're trying to solve, describe what an enterprise information portal for project management is and the value that it can bring to your organization, give you a demonstration of what's possible, summarize the benefits by role that the executives that you deal with and work with on a teamly basis, and then also outline some of the benefits of Web Center as it relates to scalability and extendability. And of course, with the spirit of the holiday season, we're going to have a next special offer. We should have time for questions and context because I've been challenged by a number of people to keep this thing under the time that it allows. So if you go to the next slide, from a top-line revenue perspective, this is one of the few solutions that I think allows IT departments to help project-centric organizations enhance their margins and drive workforce effectiveness. Let me give you a little background on myself. I'm the, as I mentioned before, Industries Director for Fishbowl Solutions. I have 10-plus years of industry experience in engineering and construction. I was formerly on the advisory board of Oracle's Engineering and Construction Strategy Council. In addition to that, I participated in a number of engineering and construction strategy sessions with Autodesk and Trimble and other vendors. And I'm the former CIO of Mortensen Construction. I have a passion for making life for project-centric field folks easier. When I participated in the Engineering and Strategy Council, it was with 20 other CIOs. And previous to Mortensen, I actually worked for several companies that built multiple internal and external portals. So I have a history of driving these solutions. A little bit about Fishbowl. Fishbowl has a goal of being the best at what we do. We want to be world-class in everything. We are experts in innovation and driving creative specialties. So we want to make sure that the knowledge that is in disparate systems across the different repositories that companies have is very usable, is relevant, and is available for people where they are working. The solutions that we specialize are as follows. Accounts payable automation, and in some cases just creating bundles where people can bundle the supporting documents for billing to customers. Enterprise search across business systems. So this is not just about providing search across one system, but it's about multiple systems and enabling IP reuse. This is just one of the strategies that we use. Enterprise information strategy, turning information into usable knowledge. I'm constantly amazed at how many companies out there do not have some type of knowledge strategy for their organization and how they can get that knowledge in the hands of workers. Also driving a user experience from a design and document development perspective. So basically mobility. How do we design these solutions so that they can work on a mobile device and that they adapt to the mobile device that they're being used on? And then, of course, what we're here to talk about today is self-service portals. In most of these services that you notice that we have what's called jumpstart services. And jumpstart services are a combination of consulting services and IP that we use together to ensure quicker wins and less time with fewer resources. So why are we here today? When I first joined Mortensen Construction about 6.5 years ago, I was amazed at the number of applications that we had to do our jobs. Literally, most engineering, project-centric firms have well over 150 applications that they need to do some type of work during the project lifecycle. There's multiple tools with separate unique logins, look and feels, and there's a lot of the solutions, believe it or not, that either have no mobility or the mobility experience is completely different than the experience that somebody would have sitting at their desk. The documents that people use that are critical to building a structure or executing on a project are in various systems. There's no automation between those systems to enforce process. I saw a lot of dual entry, and I saw a lot of custom interfaces that my team was forced to build to make sure that System A would talk to System B. And so we kind of put a picture of that on what that might look like on the right. I also referenced an article out of Psychology Today, And so there's a case to be made, and this will be part of the ROI that we can discuss later, that with all the different tasks that people are doing, people are losing up to 40% of their productivity by switching from one task to another. So the goal is not to juggle more balls. The goal is actually to juggle less balls and do a more effective job of the work that you need to get done. So the goal of what we did at Mortensen Construction was to build a single solution that had access to key systems. So you'll see a pictorial of the front screen of what we called Project Connect. But the secret to this was beyond what you see in the first screen. It was allowing the people to get to the systems that they needed to do to their jobs. And what you find is that 80% of the value that people get is from 20% of the application. And so we needed to do a good job of understanding how our different constituents use the systems. We also wanted to have a single source of truth. So we wanted a repository that had all the project assets that we could put project controls on to make sure that we had the latest versions of the information for the workforce in the field. And we had to make it mobile because most people want to get to the information they need to do their job from their device. And the number one question that was asked from my IT department was, how much does the device weigh, and can I get to the information that I need to do my job from that device anytime, anywhere? So at its very simplest roots, we started building Project Connect based on this diagram. And so I sat down with a number of executives, and we outlined some of their frustrations of the different user interfaces and multiple logons, and basically drew this information hub that's red square in the middle. And I said, what if we had the capability to go to one spot and have a single sign-on experience and be able to access the different solutions that people need to do their job? And furthermore, what if we had the access, so in the case of a schedule, where if it's a simpler project, we might use a Microsoft project schedule. If it was a more complex project, then we would use Primavera's P6 for scheduling. So what if we had the ability to make sure that somebody out in the field needs to update the schedule? They need to make a change to the schedule. They can go to this information hub, and based on who they are, what they're doing, what project they're working on, it took them to the system to execute that task. So there was less about, here's the application I'm using versus here's the task that I need to execute as I go forward. So there's a very high-level summary based on the Profit Magazine article from August of 2013 of who Mortensen is and what the benefits of Project Connect were. But what I want to highlight here is that we had both internal users and external users using Project Connect. So there was, before Project Connect, there was no business hub for all the content that was needed for the project teams based on who they were. Mortensen is a very innovative company. We're using a lot of collaboration tools, a lot of building information modeling tools, and it's critical that we be able to share information not only within Mortensen but with our project partners. So we had difficulty getting quick feedback to make necessary changes as we went forward. So we want to make sure that we had a single source of truth and that we had one virtual system to solve the project requirements that were put in front of us. We also wanted to make sure we had secure content storage and that the standards, we could integrate to multiple systems. So building Project Connect wasn't just about putting a front end on one system. It was about putting a front end and creating usability and extensibility in multiple systems. So as we go through this process, I want to just diagram some architecture of how we did this and why we did this. One of the project engineers before we started this project told me, we reinvent the wheel over and over again. And so what we wanted to make sure was that there was clearly a gap in the amount of intellectual property that we had in the organization, and was that intellectual property getting reused? And so what we found is that a lot of critical information was buried in file structures and other parts of, the enterprise, whether that was in a specific system or a specific folder or sitting on somebody's laptop or sitting on their iPad. And so we wanted to make sure that as a project went through its various phases, as diagrammed on the right, that we had access to people based on who their expertise was, that knowledge was shared from not only previous projects, but people that had worked on previous projects, and that knowledge was fed from one phase of the project to another. There also was no feedback loop, so if I was at a point where I was doing a digital handoff at stage 5, and I needed to take the documents that I used for the project and turn them over to the owner or the end client of that project, there was no way to provide feedback as to what was effective, what worked, and what didn't work. So when the next project came along, we could take advantage of that intellectual property to do a better job the next time. I think one thing I want to highlight is also the last 2 bullet points as defined in the problem on the left-hand side of the screen. If you Google the term silver tsunami, what you will find is that there is what I would almost call an epidemic. Over the next 10 years, the number of people in the workforce that are going to retire is staggering. And so if your company hasn't done a demographic study of what is the age of your workforce in current, critical roles in your organization, I would suggest that you do that. It would, most companies that have done it, it's been very alarming to see how many workers are actually going to lose. And then also they're going to lose the knowledge that workforce has unless they start capturing it in systems and able to reuse it. The other thing that you have is the economy is starting to pick up. So there's a number of folks that are hiring either younger generation workers or they're, quite frankly, stealing workers from other companies. And so you want to make sure that you can get that workforce up to speed as quickly as possible. And so you want quick, intuitive ways that they can do their job as quickly as possible. And so this is one way to make it an intuitive experience so they're worried more about doing their job than the systems that they need to do their job. So here's just some high-level stats on, potential cost overruns related to projects. So obviously this bridge isn't a real image. Would be interesting if it was, but, how does your organization take advantage of intellectual property or knowledge that you already have or you already know? How does your company take advantage of expertise that people have from doing previous projects that is in their head that isn't in a system? And how do you make sure that intellectual property is available for the next generation? So I'm not going to concentrate on all these different projects. I'm actually going to go through a little bit of healthcare.gov because that's probably one of the most current projects that's available and a lot of studies on what worked and what didn't work. But imagine with healthcare.gov if when it was originally thought of as a concept that we would have sat down and said, how do we reuse intellectual property that's already been developed for a website like this? What expertise is available not only in the government sector but also in the private sector to help build a website like this? What are the websites that are similar to this, whether it's an Amazon or some other retail site, another healthcare enrollment site, things like that? Very few of those things were considered when healthcare.gov was started. And not only that, I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, so Minnesota was one of the states that actually built its own healthcare site. So we had multiple repositories and websites being built. So this just really highlights, the overrun related to healthcare.gov. So on this slide here, this is a typical phased approach to most projects. You go through started initiation all the way to the project close. And what I think is missing here is there should be a step in front of initiate of what knowledge do we have from previous projects? Who worked on those previous projects and what insights do they have? What did we do well on projects like the one that we're about to start? What did we not do well on projects like this that we're about to start? And how do we make sure that we don't make those mistakes over again? So there's a very siloed approach to the different data sources. So if you look at scheduling systems, estimating systems, project management, administration systems, even where you keep the project documents, there isn't an overall one repository that helps us outline what might have happened well on a project and what might have been improved on a project. So while the problems start in phase one and the initiate, they're typically not discovered until you get into the control area in phase four. And I know most projects scramble at the end to figure out which documents do we need to turn over to our customer or our owner so that they can continue to support that project, whether it's an IT system, whether it's an actual building or a structure. You know, we don't take the time to do that proactively as we're building the initiative. That tends to be an afterthought and a very costly one. So what should the solution of enterprise content management collaboration look like? Well, first of all, there should be a single secure storage location for all documents, regardless of which system that they're on. Again, my portfolio at Mortensen was well over 150 applications, and some of those were one-off applications that, you know, were used for certain types of projects. Others were used for projects, for every project, but maybe only 20% of the application was used by 90% of the folks. So it's important that we have a secure sharing and collaboration area for all phases of the project, that we're able to push work to individuals, that they not only don't have to log into a system to go after it, but what work is coming to them, that there's always a single source of truth, because having the latest documents and the latest information is going to ensure that you have a high-quality product that you're building for your customer. It's also going to ensure that you're following best practices as it relates to safety, innovations, things like that. And there also needs to be a feedback loop. So again, after we've finished a project, what did we do well? What did we learn? How do we take those lessons learned and those best practices and apply them to the project, the next project like this going forward? And what I always was challenged with a number of executives was, well, every engineering project is a little different, or every construction project is a little different, or every IT project is a little different. And what I found is if you actually break it into its components, many projects have the same or very similar characteristics. So there are lessons that you can learn from a number of aspects of a project that you've done previously that is going to help you going forward. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the portal and show you what's possible in a second, but I also wanted to highlight a couple things. This solution that we're talking about and what's possible is not just a solution that you can run on-premise, it's also a solution that you can run in the cloud, and also that you can link to the cloud. So a number of companies I know are using cloud-based storage systems, cloud-based file sharing systems, collaboration systems, and so this is not just locking you into an on-premise alternative. A number of IT firms or IT organizations are getting pressure to move out of their data centers and get into, not have to worry about the environmentals, and this certainly is a solution that it could apply in this case. So what we're showing you here is really what's possible, and we'll go through a demonstration of some use cases here in just a second. But basically what we want to do is we provide an overview of what an enterprise information portal for project management looks like. And again, the goal here is to identify the 80 or 90% of the value that people are going to get out of the 20% of the systems that they use every day. We had an analogy where the number one task that a field engineer does, whether they're from an engineering firm, an architectural firm, or construction firm, was they did what's called a request for information. It was a simple task where I have a question for somebody from one of the other firms. I need to document that I've asked that question, and I need to document what the answer back is. And so the ability to make that RFI process seamless, available on their mobile device, and something that they can, get answers back to quickly is something that is critical as as schedules tighten and as budgets continue to contract for these critical projects. So we wanted single secure location for all the project management information, and it's an aggregate of multiple data sources. Again, the number of systems and data, file structures, and information that people need to do a project is growing exponentially. And again, the most important thing, I think, is mobile ready. There still is the ability and the desire for people to take information offline, because as much as the Internet has grown and Wi-Fi capabilities for the enterprise have grown, there's still times when we need information, access to critical information, and we don't have connectivity. And we want it in an easy and intuitive format. I was talking to a CFO at one of our clients recently as to why they wanted to build a solution like this. And it was very simple for him. He said, listen, I'm not able to hire, some of my young engineers are leaving the organization because our tools are not what they need to be. And so people are leaving the organization because they want an intuitive experience. They've grown up with the Internet. They've grown up with their iPhones and their tablets in college, and they want to continue to use that as that experience goes forward. So if you go to the next slide, I'm certainly not going to get into some of these technologies, but what I want to talk about is how you bring the different enterprise applications together. And this is just a subset of the solutions that might be used across the enterprise. You'll notice that this is not all Oracle-based solutions. There's certainly, Word documents and PDFs and DWGs of drawings and documents. We've had clients pull in, obviously, non-Oracle solutions into a solution like this, whether that's front office solutions like Trimble and Bentley or a CRM system like Salesforce. But the important part is that you have the standard integration protocols that allow you to serve the data and the information from these systems up in a more intuitive and consistent format. And the consistency and intuitiveness of the tool, being able to use it on their own device, is what really drives workforce effectiveness and quite frankly, workforce satisfaction. So who are the key stakeholders for a project like this? As CIO at Mortensen, I always wanted to partner with one of the other executives in the organization, because typically if an IT project is going to be successful, it has to be driven in cooperation with the business. So, typically you will partner with the project, field executives, procurement executive. In a lot of cases it was partnering with the chief operating officer. So again, as you drive forward, you want to make sure that you're addressing the problems that those individuals want to solve. So we talked about workforce effectiveness. This was the number one initiative that most chief operating officers want to solve, is how do I make my workforce more effective? How do I give them access to intellectual property that's already available in a repository somewhere? How do I give them access to people that have done something that they're about to do before? And how do I drive a superior experience, for not only for my customers but for my employees, to help drive more business, but also help drive more recruiting. So there's, as I talked about before, clearly a change in the expectations of the workforce, that's the up-and-coming workforce, that they expect these solutions to be available. They want the information that they need to do their job, and they want that information readily available on a mobile device, and they don't want to have to sit through a 5-day training seminar to worry about how to do a particular task. They want that information to provide them on a quick and mobile basis. From a CIO perspective, CIOs are constantly being pressured to reduce IT costs. But I think the piece that gets missed is also reduce IT risk. So, creating a single source of truth across multiple content repositories associated with this project information reduces risk, because that allows me to share information that's up to date, is consistent with what's being shared across the project, and actually creates a competitive advantage. This is one of the solutions that you as an IT department can partner with the business to say, I'm going to help create a solution like this for you to help drive top-line revenue, to enhance margins, and to improve workforce effectiveness. From a customer's perspective, and it should be important to note that with the Project Connect solution that was built by my team at Mortensen, for every one person that we had that was a Mortensen team member that logged into the Project Connect system, there was 10 other folks from outside of Mortensen that would use that system, whether it was a customer, a subcontractor, an architect, an engineer. But what we wanted to be able to do was say, instead of getting a specific device, instead of getting, you would only work on this browser, it would only work on an iPad, it's going to work on your device of choice. And you can access critical information anytime, anywhere. And when we come out and we present, or when we come out and want to discuss the project, you can get that information all the time based on the user ID and password that we give you. And so if you need to make updates, if you need to approve change requests, if you want to see where we're at from a schedule perspective, you can get to that information anytime you want. From a project executive perspective, it's critical in this competitive environment of how do I grow revenues while continuing to improve project quality and safety. And I think there are a number of methods that you can use that I'd be happy to discuss with you after the call on how you measure the cost of quality or the cost of safety and the value of improving quality and safety on any type of project. But as the workforce continues to grow, as the economy continues to rebound, there's this growing competition not only for the workforce, but growing competition for work. And when I talk to a number of firms, the revenues seem to be going up, but not necessarily the margins that they're getting on those jobs. So we have to continue to reinvent and find better ways to do the work that we're doing. One of the ways to do that is to promote collaboration between the different team members, to promote the reuse of the intellectual property that we have, and to capture the intellectual property in the workforce that, over the next 5 or 10 years is going to retire. These individuals have what I'm going to call, a lot of very critical information based on previous experiences or based on previous jobs that they've worked that we need to make sure that we take advantage of as we go forward as an organization. One of the other areas that we want to make sure that we're talking about is the procurement executive. So, overall insights and the cost of projects is typically driven by, the vendors that we use, the materials that we use, the intellectual resources that we use, or the equipment that we use to put that, puts a job together. So, and we want to make sure that we're preventing delays in projects, we're controlling our material costs. So having a clear understanding of, what equipment's working well, what equipment's not working well, what materials are being used, and helps me as a procurement executive negotiate better deals with my vendors, helps me understand what equipment I need to be ordering, what equipment I should be getting rid of. And it's a dramatic savings, a dramatic margin enhancer as you go forward on some of these critical projects going forward. So as we go forward, we're going to give you a short demonstration to show you what's possible. And so what you will see in this demonstration is, a couple different roles. One is a project executive role. So we have a portfolio dashboard. So this particular project executive is responsible for multiple projects. We're going to do some in-text collaboration. We're going to show you some alerts because, as the number of projects that somebody's responsible for grows, we want to make sure that they don't have to go into every project and see what that dashboard looks like. There's alerts that are served up that says this particular project needs your attention and here's why. And then we're going to show you how it's what's possible to create a new project based on information from a similar project that was previously done. So what you're not going to see in this demonstration is, and Jerry Aber, our chief architect and strategist, is going to give this demonstration, but you're not going to see Jerry switching between many different applications. You're not going to see a different user experience. You're going to see him create a new project, but he's going to be using some of the IP from previous projects and understanding who is on those projects. And he's going to use the insight of those projects to create the project going forward. So, Jerry, go ahead.
Thanks, Cole. My name is Jerry Aber. I'm an enterprise architect with Fishbowl Solutions, and I'll be taking you through a demo of the AEC project portfolio management solution we have with Fishbowl Solutions. What you're seeing now is a landing page of our portal solution leveraging content, data, and information across multiple sources. As you see rotating across the top, you see banner carousels that might provide information regarding key information that's key to the landing page, and communications, chatter, notifications, events, and featured news are all possibilities for the overall solution. The landing page can be personalized like the rest of the solution throughout the site to help target information based on your role and other attributes about the user who's logged in. I'm going to take you through two use cases. The first one will be an executive type use case for someone who might want to manage and view attributes about a project or portfolio dashboard. This information can be pulled from multiple sources and prepared and displayed on a single page. For example, the chatter box might be a component of that, portfolio performance across multiple projects, portfolio reports that you can click into quickly, and targeting specific projects that are active that you wish to have targeted to your display in your portfolio dashboard based on your personalization. From there, you might click into a particular project dashboard and view the individual metrics about that project. Its overall performance, its earned value, milestones, cash flow, and important key metrics about that project. That is a high-level use case that we show with the overall solution. The other use case we wish to demonstrate today is an opportunity that might come through from your CRM system. An opportunity would show up as an alert or a notification on your landing page and allow you to click into that opportunity to start drilling down into more information about it. It takes you through the process of guiding you through the information about the opportunity, which can then be clicked on to help drive more information on the display. From here you see the opportunity data pulled from the CRM system, and at this step you can create a project. Now the key information here is about creating a project from a specific library of other assets that have been accumulated over the course of time. So you might see a set of information on your automatic search results for similar projects that were called out of for the CRM relationship. You might click into that particular project and review additional information about that project and its historical perspective in terms of its budget, forecast, key metrics about that, some diagrams, some imagery, some high-level information about this project. From there you can create the project based on that template. This information is working with your back office ERP system or project management system to help pull information quickly and easily into the portal. From there you can create the project based on the information that's been provided on that template, get a project number, update your back office systems, and see returned information about that update and the template that was used for the creation of that project. This information is viewable and accessible in multiple tabs and can be targeted towards the user who's viewing it. At that point in time, the next opportunity and step would be to access the individual new project dashboard, which may have some basic metrics to start off, and then you can kind of drill into viewing the project dashboard. Cole?
Thank you, Jerry. So if we go to some of the benefits of a system like this, it's really about enhancing margins for an organization. So how do I enhance my margins through the reuse of IP that is already in the company? How do I foster and promote real-time collaboration? So I don't want to reinvent the same wheel over and over again. I want to make sure that somebody who's invented that wheel before can talk to me about how it's been invented, or I can go out and find a best practice or a procedure of how I need to do that going forward. I can also reduce corporate risk and IT costs by standardizing on one system of record. The costs related to legal discoveries with a company having multiple repositories, particularly repositories that you may or may not know about that your project teams are using, can be astronomical. And you're creating risk in the organization if you're allowing your folks to use those repositories without the proper controls in place. I think we also want to talk about working smarter. So how do I increase my workforce effectiveness by taking the data in the systems, and turning them into actionable insights? How do I notify people when they need to take action? How do I filter it down so that I'm using the 20% of the application that I get 80% of the value out of? And how do I improve the project quality and safety by providing remote access to the single source of truth? You know, more and more people want access to these critical systems and the data on their device of choice. They don't want to worry about a browser. They don't want to worry about a device. And they want the design to be responsive. So if I'm using, if I want to do an RFI and I'm sitting at my computer, I have one experience because it understands the real estate that I have on the page. If I want to do that RFI on my smartphone, it understands the real estate that I have there and adjust the page accordingly. Let me give you a brief overview of the technologies related to Web Center and why Web Center was selected for the particular initiative that we did at Mortensen. I had used other technologies in the past, and what I found was that Web Center was probably the technology that was the most extensible and was the most reusable. So while we showed the highlights of Project Connect, there are other extensions, both internal and external, that, you know, we built as we went forward. And so it was about taking that platform and using it across the organization to extend the value of the technology investment. So it's a very configurable platform. So you'll see sites, portal, and content. So it's kind of a Web Center centric. What I like about the Web Center platform is, as you can see on this slide, is it's not just about Oracle products. If I want to serve up systems or data from other repositories that are not Oracle-based, I can do that. If I want to go out and get information from the cloud, I can do that. So there's other values in user solutions that, again, across my portfolio of applications, what is the information that I need to serve up, and how do I serve it up in the most effective, intuitive manner so that I can service and make my workforce more effective going forward. Again, I'll go back to the original slide. This was the portal view that I sat down with a bunch of business leaders and said, listen, if we can provide you with a single access point to all the critical systems that are needed to do your job, and it's not just an access to that system, but below, say, schedule or below estimate is the 2 or 3 functions, you know, quick links and connections to the 2 or 3 functions that they do every day. So they're not having to log in, they're not having to go through a menu structure, and they can access that from their mobile device. How much value does that add to the organization? How much of a differentiator does that make, you know, for the company? How does that promote us as a company that innovates and uses technology in this industry? And what we found was it was a clear competitive differentiator. That instead of handing, when we did a proposal, instead of handing a client or a prospective client a bunch of 3-ring binders or some fancy documents, we gave them a user ID and password and said, this is how we're going to collaborate with you going forward. You're going to be able to do it from your device. You're going to be able to do it on your time, and you're going to be able to do it from anywhere in the world. And it was a very compelling solution, not just for the external parties that were involved, but for our customers and for our employees. And so on this next slide, you kind of look at, you know, this is more engineering and construction focused, but you look at the whole, you know, lead the contract to digital handover process. And the amount of reuse that should be done in getting new work is dramatically different than the amount of reuse that's done to get that work. So, very specific example. A company X does a proposal for a healthcare project in their Seattle office. And it's a project that the proposal is absolutely phenomenal. That proposal gets lost unless it's put in a collaborative environment where we can take advantage of the information that was in that proposal for the next healthcare proposal that, you know, an office in Detroit is going to put together. And then also all the way through the social enterprise of connecting with people, connecting to the tools that they need to do their job, all the way through to the digital handover. How do I take the information that is critical to, you know, whether it's an IT project, construction project, how do I take the critical information that was developed during that project and create a packet that is usable, searchable, and is able to be used by the end owner in a digital handover rather than scrambling at the end to put the documentation and everything together. So, as I said before, in the spirit of the holiday season, we have a free executive assessment going forward. In the spirit of why reinvent the wheel, through my years as an executive, there have been a number of people that have helped me grow and develop and learn more about the industry, more about the solutions that are in the industry. And so I think it's important to make sure that we are helping you not have to start this whole process from scratch, but actually hit the ground running. So we are offering an executive one-on-one discussion where we can sit down and discuss the systems that you have in place today, review the processes that are used to access the project-related information, what's working well, what's not working well, discuss the overall business challenges that you have around collaboration, understands the strengths, weaknesses, limitations, and the risks around making systems and knowledgeable more accessible, because there are some pitfalls that you need to look out for. And I think one of the other important things is, how do you put a value on implementing a solution like this? More and more companies see the value, but as you're working with executives and you're comparing this initiative to another, you need to be able to come back to your executive team or your board with very hard ROI numbers. This is the value that this solution is going to drive. Here's a return on investment that we're going to get. And so be happy to sit down with you for a 1-hour one-on-one discussion and give you some actionable objective recommendations based on what I see as industry best practices, customer successes that we've had at Fishbowl, and user insight from other folks that we've talked to throughout this process and as we've developed solutions like this.